Detective James Morrison lounges in the courtroom, a smirk playing across his face as he watches the witness take the stand. Another complaint about police conduct, another waste of time. The woman smooths her simple navy blazer, looking nothing like the high-powered lawyers he usually faces. Her natural hair is pulled back in a neat bun, and her minimal jewelry suggests a government salary, probably some community advocate trying to make a name for herself. Morrison shifts in his wooden chair, the leather of his holster creaking against the polished wood. 19 years on the force had taught him to read people, and this one screams amateur hour. He exchanges knowing glances with Officers Thompson and Rodriguez seated beside him. They've been through this dance before, some bleeding heart claiming police misconduct, demanding accountability, ending in nothing but wasted taxpayer money. The courtroom's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the woman's face as she raises her right hand for the oath. Morrison notices her steady gaze, unwavering despite his obvious disdain. Something about her composure irritates him. Most witnesses show at least a hint of nervousness. He chalks it up to naive confidence. She probably thinks she has an open and shut case of racial profiling or excessive force. The bailiff's voice echoes through the half-empty chamber. Please state your name and occupation for the record. Morrison pulls out his phone, scrolling through messages under the pretense of reviewing case notes. He's testified in enough of these proceedings to know the script by heart. Some sob story about feeling targeted, maybe a dash of statistics about departmental bias, all wrapped up in righteous indignation. His surgeon had warned him about maintaining a professional demeanor, but Morrison can't help himself. He lets out an audible sigh as the woman adjusts the microphone, her movements deliberate and practiced. The gallery behind him remains unusually quiet, typically filled with community activists and their supporters. Today's audience seems different, more reserved. Officer Thompson nudges him, gesturing toward their department-appointed attorney, who's shooting Morrison a warning look. He straightens up slightly but maintains his dismissive expression. Let them all see how seriously he takes these proceedings. After all, his record speaks for itself. Dozens of commendations, a spotless internal affairs history, officially at least, and the highest arrest record in the precinct. The woman clears her throat, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom's sound system. Morrison's attention drifts to the window, where gray clouds threaten rain, a fitting backdrop for another dreary day of bureaucratic theater. He's already planning his evening, drinks with the guys, swapping stories about the latest attempts to undermine good police work with politically correct oversight. Little does Morrison know, this mundane Tuesday morning is about to become the defining moment of his career, and this seemingly unremarkable witness is about to shatter every assumption he's made since she walked through those courtroom doors. Special Agent Sarah Chen reviews her notes one final time in the courthouse bathroom, her FBI credentials securely hidden beneath her deliberately understated blazer. 6 months of meticulous investigation into the 12th Precinct's corruption had led to this moment. The mirror reflects back a carefully crafted image, professional but unremarkable, exactly the kind of witness Detective Morrison and his cronies would underestimate. Her team is strategically positioned throughout the courtroom, Agent Martinez posing as a court reporter, Agent Williams blending in with the gallery crowd, and her supervisor, Deputy Director Thompson, disguised as a janitor near the back entrance. Every detail has been planned, every contingency considered. The FBI's Internal Corruption Task Force hadn't spent half a year building this case to let Morrison slip through their fingers. Chen checks her watch, a subtle recording device transmitting to their mobile command center parked 3 blocks away. The evidence against Morrison is damning. Doctored body cam footage, falsified reports, witness intimidation, and a pattern of racial profiling that spans his entire career. But it's the money trail that truly seals his fate, hundreds of thousands in unexplained deposits coinciding with suspicious case dismissals. Her phone buzzes. A text from Martinez confirming that Morrison arrived displaying his typical arrogant demeanor. Perfect. Chen has studied his psychological profile extensively. His superiority complex, particularly toward women of color, would make him careless. She adjusts her simple gold necklace, another recording device, remembering the countless victims who'd suffered under Morrison's abuse of power. The bathroom door creaks open, and a young law clerk enters, nodding politely. Chen returns the gesture, maintaining her cover as she gathers her modest briefcase. The weight of the classified documents inside reminds her of the stakes. This isn't just about one corrupt detective. Morrison's case could expose systemic issues throughout the department, leading to much-needed reforms. As she walks toward the courtroom, Chen mentally rehearses her testimony. The key is to start small, establishing the pattern of misconduct through seemingly innocent observations. Let Morrison dig his own grave with his dismissive attitude and inevitable attempts to intimidate her on the stand. By the time she reveals her true identity, the trap will have already sprung. The heavy wooden doors loom before her. Through the small windows, she can see Morrison lounging in his chair, radiating smug confidence. Chen takes a deep breath, channeling the same calm precision that earned her the department's highest marksmanship scores. In 15 minutes, that smirk would be replaced by something entirely different. The thought brings a slight smile to her face as she pushes open the doors, ready to deliver justice in a way Detective Morrison never saw coming. The courtroom temperature seems to drop several degrees as Special Agent Chen begins her testimony. She starts with seemingly innocuous details about routine traffic stops, watching Morrison's smirk grow wider with each passing minute. His pen taps against the table in an irritating rhythm, his confidence radiating through the room like a toxic cloud. "And could you describe the events of March 15th? The prosecutor asks, right on cue. Chen pulls out a manila envelope, her movements deliberately slow. "I have here documentation of 17 separate incidents where Detective Morrison's body camera footage doesn't match his filed reports." The tapping pen goes silent. Specifically on March 15th at approximately 2:47 p.m. Morrison's attorney shifts forward, but Chen continues, her voice steady as a surgeon's hand. The timestamp on his report shows a routine traffic stop. However, our enhanced audio analysis reveals a very different conversation. She removes her first piece of evidence, and Morrison's face twitches, the first crack in his facade. "Objection, Your Honor." Morrison's attorney stands. The witness hasn't established any expertise in audio analysis. Chen reaches into her blazer, producing her FBI credentials with practiced precision. Special Agent Sarah Chen, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Corruption Task Force. "I believe these will establish my credentials." The badge catches the fluorescent light, sending reflections dancing across Morrison's rapidly paling face. The courtroom erupts in hushed whispers. Officer Thompson drops his notepad. Rodriguez's coffee cup freezes halfway to his mouth. Morrison's attorney stumbles over his words, trying to withdraw his objection, but the damage is done. The trap is sprung. "We've been investigating the 12th precinct for 6 months, Chen continues, each word another nail in Morrison's coffin. She produces a stack of financial records. These documents show a pattern of unexplained deposits to offshore accounts, correlating perfectly with suspicious case dismissals. Morrison's swagger has evaporated completely now. His eyes dart between the exits, but Agent Williams shifts slightly, blocking the nearest door. The detective's hand instinctively moves toward his weapon, but Chen's quiet voice stops him cold. "I wouldn't, Detective. The building is surrounded, and your service weapon has already been disabled. Standard FBI protocol when apprehending potentially dangerous suspects." Her emphasis on the word suspect draws a visible flinch. "Now, shall we discuss the events of April 23rd? I believe that's when things became particularly interesting." Detective Morrison watches helplessly as his career implodes in high-definition detail across the courtroom's evidence screens. Special Agent Chen methodically presents surveillance footage showing him accepting envelopes in dimly lit parking lots, his voice crystal clear on enhanced audio recordings as he threatens witnesses. Each piece of evidence lands like a precise blow, systematically dismantling 19 years of carefully constructed lies. Exhibit 47, Chen announces, pulling up a spreadsheet. A comprehensive analysis of Detective Morrison's financial activities over the past 5 years. The numbers scroll past, deposits, withdrawals, offshore transfers, all meticulously documented. Note the correlation between these transactions and the mysterious disappearance of evidence in several high-profile cases. Morrison's colleagues, once loyal defenders, now edge away from him as if corruption might be contagious. Officer Thompson stares fixedly at the floor, likely remembering every compromise, every moment he looked the other way. Rodriguez has already been escorted out by FBI agents, having cracked under the pressure and agreed to cooperate. The evidence keeps coming, bodycam footage that mysteriously cuts out during crucial moments, suddenly restored by FBI tech experts, witness statements that were buried, now resurrected, complaint forms that vanished from internal affairs, now projected in damning detail. Morrison's attorney has long since stopped objecting, instead furiously scribbling notes for what's clearly becoming a damage control strategy rather than a defense. And here, Chen continues, pulling up a series of photographs, we have documentation of meetings between Detective Morrison and known criminal elements. The images are damning. Nighttime encounters, exchanges of packages, handshakes with individuals whose rap sheets now fill the screen. Each of these individuals saw their cases mysteriously dismissed or evidence go missing under Detective Morrison's supervision. From the gallery, Morrison hears the soft weeping of families whose lives he'd impacted, people who'd filed complaints that went nowhere, who'd lost faith in the system he'd sworn to uphold. Their presence now feels like a jury of their own, their quiet dignity more damning than any shout could be. As Chen methodically connects the final dots, Morrison's world continues to shrink. His phone buzzes incessantly with messages from reporters already caught wind of the story. Through the courthouse windows, he spots news vans arriving, their satellite dishes rising like vultures circling their prey. His reputation, his pension, his freedom, everything he built through both legitimate and illegitimate means, crumbles under the weight of irrefutable evidence. Morrison's attorney rises, his expensive suit failing to mask his desperation. Your Honor, we request a brief recess to review this new evidence. His voice wavers, knowing full well the FBI has orchestrated this moment perfectly. There will be no procedural escape routes. Special Agent Chen remains impassive as the defense attempts to regain control. She'd seen this scenario play out dozens of times. The desperate scramble for legal loopholes, the sudden desire to cooperate fully, the inevitable attempt to shift blame to systemic issues rather than individual corruption. If I may, Your Honor, Chen interjects, producing another document. We have recordings of Detective Morrison explicitly coaching Officer Rodriguez on evidence tampering procedures. She plays the audio, Morrison's own voice filling the courtroom with instructions on deleting body cam footage. His attorney's shoulders slump visibly. The defense's strategy shifts rapidly, almost frantically. They attempt to paint Morrison as a product of a broken system, a dedicated officer who merely lost his way. But Chen counters with precise timestamps, bank records, and surveillance photos showing the calculated nature of his actions. Each piece of evidence has been vetted by multiple federal prosecutors, each potential defense anticipated and preemptively dismantled. Morrison watches his attorney flounder against Chen's methodical presentation. The lawyer attempts to discredit specific pieces of evidence, only to have Chen reveal multiple layers of authentication. He questions her investigative methods, only to have her produce signed federal warrants and impeccable chain of custody documentation. As the defense's options dwindle, Morrison feels the weight of dozens of eyes on him, fellow officers, courthouse staff, and victims' families. His attorney makes one final, desperate attempt to exclude certain evidence on procedural grounds, but Chen calmly produces signed affidavits from federal judges authorizing every aspect of the investigation. The judge, who has remained largely silent throughout the proceedings, now leans forward. Counselor, she addresses Morrison's attorney, do you have any substantive challenges to the evidence presented? The question hangs in the air, heavy with implications. Morrison's attorney glances at his client, then back at his notes, knowing that every potential defense strategy has been systematically eliminated before he could even present it. The police chief's press conference draws national media attention, camera flashes illuminating his grim expression as he addresses the crowd gathered outside the courthouse. Behind him, FBI agents escort Morrison through the building's side entrance, his wrists bound in handcuffs that gleam under the harsh spotlights. Today marks a difficult but necessary moment of accountability. the chief begins, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. The actions of Detective James Morrison represent a betrayal of the highest order, not just of his oath, but of every citizen he swore to protect and serve. Inside the processing center, Morrison surrenders his badge and gun, items he'd carried for nearly 2 decades. The booking officer, a rookie he'd once trained, avoids eye contact as she takes his fingerprints. Standard procedure, but nothing feels standard anymore. His photo ID, mugshot now, captures a man stripped of his arrogance, finally facing the weight of his actions. The charges read like a career retrospective gone wrong: corruption, obstruction of justice, civil rights violations, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and criminal conspiracy. Each count represents years of potential prison time, each charge backed by Special Agent Chen's meticulous investigation. News helicopters circle overhead as Morrison's former colleagues clear out his desk. They find more evidence: unofficial files, notes about payoffs, lists of cooperative witnesses, all carefully documented by FBI photographers. His precinct parking space, once a symbol of authority, is already reassigned. His nameplate vanishes from the office door before the evening shift begins. The ripple effects spread quickly through the department. Internal Affairs launches reviews of every case Morrison touched over his 19-year career. Defense attorneys flood the courts with appeals. The FBI expands its investigation, following leads that implicate other officers in Morrison's corrupt network. The blue wall of silence begins to crack under federal pressure. The 12th Precinct transforms in the wake of Morrison's arrest. FBI oversight teams occupy the building's 3rd floor, methodically reviewing decades of cases. Officers undergo mandatory retraining, their routines disrupted by new accountability measures and enhanced supervision protocols. Special Agent Chen oversees the implementation of a comprehensive reform package. Body cameras now upload footage directly to secure federal servers. Civilian complaint forms receive tracking numbers, monitored by an independent review board. Internal Affairs gets restructured, with direct reporting lines to federal authorities. The old guard resists initially. Veteran officers grumble about paperwork and oversight, but their protests fade as more corruption surfaces. Each revealed instance of misconduct reinforces the necessity of change. Young officers, eager to restore public trust, embrace the reforms with unexpected enthusiasm. Community leaders gain seats on policy review boards. Town halls replace closed-door meetings. The precinct's walls, once covered in commendations and old photos, now display transparency pledges and civilian rights information. Statistical analysis of arrests and interventions becomes mandatory, with quarterly public reporting requirements. Chen works closely with the new precinct captain, a reformer brought in from another state. Together, they implement psychological screening protocols, cultural sensitivity training, and enhanced de-escalation procedures. The changes faced resistance from the police union, but public support remained strong, bolstered by improved community relations and declining complaint rates. Former officers who served under Morrison face choices: adapt to the new standards or find different careers. Some retire early. Others transfer to different departments, only to find similar reforms spreading across the state. A few step forward with information about past misconduct, hoping to clear their consciences and rebuild their reputations. Technology plays a crucial role in the transformation. Artificial intelligence systems flag potential misconduct patterns. Dashboard cameras incorporate real-time monitoring. Dispatch protocols prioritize de-escalation and community service. Each change builds upon the last, creating layers of accountability where none existed before. By year's end, the 12th Precinct becomes a model for police reform nationwide. Law enforcement agencies from across the country send observers to study the new systems. Chen's investigation, initially focused on one corrupt detective, catalyzes a movement that reshapes American law enforcement from the inside out. 1 year later, Special Agent Sarah Chen stands at the Police Academy podium, addressing the graduating class of 2026. The auditorium buzzes with anticipation. Her reputation now precedes her. In the back row, several officers from the 12th Precinct sit attentively, their newly polished badges reflecting the stage lights. Your badge isn't just a symbol of authority, Chen begins, her voice carrying through the hall. It's a promise to your community. She gestures to the screen behind her, where statistics show dramatic improvements in community relations and police accountability across reformed precincts. The Morrison case, now taught in law enforcement curricula nationwide, serves as both warning and catalyst for change. Morrison himself watches the news coverage from his prison cell, serving year one of a 15-year sentence. His case sparked a domino effect, exposing corrupt networks in departments across 3 states. Several of his former colleagues accepted plea deals, their testimonies contributing to a broader federal investigation into systemic police misconduct. The 12th Precinct, once synonymous with corruption, now hosts delegations from police departments worldwide. Its community oversight program becomes a template for reform initiatives across the country. Young officers proudly serve under new leadership, their training emphasizing integrity and accountability above all else. Chen's investigation team receives congressional recognition for their work. But more meaningful are the letters that arrive daily from citizens, officers, and community leaders, stories of restored trust, renewed purpose, and reformed institutions. The FBI establishes a specialized unit dedicated to replicating their investigative model nationwide. In the Academy Auditorium, Chen concludes her speech by inviting a special guest on stage, the young officer who processed Morrison's booking that fateful day. Now promoted to sergeant, she leads the precinct's newly established Ethics and Community Relations Division. Together, they present badges to the graduating class, each pin representing not just authority, but a commitment to justice that transcends rank or power. As the ceremony ends, Chen spots a familiar face in the crowd, Morrison's former partner, now an ethics instructor. Their eyes meet briefly, acknowledging the long path from that courtroom confrontation to today's transformed landscape. Outside, the sun sets behind the academy buildings, where a new generation of officers prepares to serve with the integrity their badges truly represent.